This week on the SEO Weekly, ChatGPT gets browsing capabilities. What does that even look like? We've got a really cool free text extractor tool to plug into ChatGPT. And speaking of ChatGPT, I did a thing. Keyword segmentation with ChatGPT. Not only can you do it in ExactScience, but I break down all of these different ways that you can do it for your own keyword portfolio. And do you like my mic? Do you like my mic? It's brand new. Is the voice silky smooth? Is it? You love it? I'm losing it. Okay, let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the SEO Weekly, where queries are weird, advice is controversial, and everything depends. I'm your host, Garrett Sussman of iPullRank, and every week I cover everything going on in the world of SEO. We're talking Google updates, blog posts, podcasts, webinars, AI, generative and SEO, communities, Twitter, you name it, I'm on it. If you're into this stuff, please subscribe to our channel, give me a like, leave me a comment, share on the socials. I genuinely appreciate it. We have so much to cover. The socials were hot this week. Let's dive in. So there was a new episode of the Google Search Console training series on YouTube. This is hosted by Daniel Waisberg. He's been doing a fantastic job showing us how to use Google Search Console. The most recent episode was all about the API. So even though Daniel does go very high level, it is a bit more technical than some of the other stuff he's covered in the past. But as an SEO, especially if you work at an enterprise level brand, it's important to know how you can leverage that API with your dev team. So he goes over things like what you can access via search analytics, the URL inspection, so in terms of like canonicals and indexing and all that jazz, sitemaps, and then ultimately sites. Really helpful stuff. Good primer if you're just starting to use Google Search Console API. A couple of weeks ago, Google announced that they were removing the page experience system. Basically, it was getting baked into the Google Core updates and the helpful content updates. So Core Web Vitals didn't have its own system. What's interesting is the SEO community got a little up in arms about it, thinking, oh, maybe that doesn't matter anymore. Maybe the speed of your website and the user experience isn't a big deal, to the extent that, at one point it was said, oh, well, technical SEOs need to think about their next job. They're not needed anymore. To the extent that Danny Sullivan, the search liaison of Google, responded to say, no, this is a miscommunication. Yes, it doesn't have its own system anymore, but that doesn't change that it's important to Google that you have a good user experience. We covered it in the SEO Weekly, but ultimately Google is focused primarily on content relevance when it comes to what is surfaced and ranked. However, if a bunch of content is competitive, the user experience can be a tiebreaker, and it still matters. Google doesn't want to send you to unhelpful, spammy type sites, and the page experience metrics do play into that. So don't worry, technical SEOs, your jobs are safe. And plus, there's so much more to technical SEO than site speed in terms of indexing, crawling, JavaScript, internal linking, obviously backlinks, but that's not really technical SEO, structured data, edge SEO. There's so much to it beyond just Core Web Vitals. So there you have it. So a couple of weeks ago, Google launched their 7th review systems update, dropping the product part of it. And this does seem to be super volatile. The dust has settled, it's finished rolling out, and people are starting to really look into what the impact is. Remember a few weeks ago, Morty Oberstein was noticing a lot more I language to really showcase that experience, that you've had personal experience with what you're reviewing. Well, Lily Ray of Amsive Digital did some of her own research with both anecdotally looking at sites and statistics. While it's hard to identify who the winners are, she did look at, categories like mommy bloggers and seeing people talking about bounce swings and saying their personal experience in the copy, or for audio files, talking about switching between headphones and really showcasing that they were trying out these products. Same for, this passionate movie site about talking about The Matrix and how the experience is, one of a lifetime, all that sort of thing. And then on the other side of things, we've all experienced those websites where you can tell the person hasn't really been to the place or tried the thing, and they're just writing about it from like Wikipedia research or looking at other review sites. Happens so much in the travel industry or in the restaurant industry where you say, oh, sorry to call out BuzzFeed, but we covered a few weeks ago using AI content about like going to Cape May. That was obviously SEO driven of like, you could go to Cape May and do this thing and do that thing. But like, there's no evidence that you actually did it because it's AI. And obviously that's a fear with the, massive rise of people generating content with AI. You have to show that you have experience, and that's using first-person language, showing specific, unique experiences that you wouldn't just see in a generic post, images, videos. In the example of the mommy blogger, having your authors having their face and their names and their biography, having author pages. We covered that in the Healthline site last week. So there are ways to showcase that experience. And with this recent review site, review systems update, it sounds like that's starting to be reflected in the search engine results pages. Speaking of AI-generated review content, so this past week, Annie Palmer of CNBC wrote an article about how Amazon is dealing with a major issue of AI-generated reviews. Now, Amazon doesn't have the greatest reputation with monitoring the authenticity of their reviews in the past. I mean, it's something that really generates value as social proof. So naturally, people try to take advantage of it. And Amazon does not get rid of a lot of them. Now, the proof is in the fact of you'll see a lot of these reviews saying copy that we're used to seeing in ChatGPT now as a large language model, which is obviously AI, not to mention the fact that there are probably a lot of people who are, creating stuff that would get by the get past the radar anyway. It's a major issue in terms of authenticity and trust. And it makes you feel skeptical that Google is not going to do a great job of getting rid of these as well. Remember in their spam report a couple of weeks ago, they're like, oh, we removed all of these bad content, all of these reviews, all that jazz. Well, there's a lot more coming. And when it comes to AI detection, it's not easy, and none of the AI detection tools actually work. The reality is there's too many false positives. You can't assume that something, just because it says it's 100% AI generated, is actually the case. There are just some crappy writers out there. Maybe that is a type of spam we need to get rid of. Anyway, it highlights the issue with AI generated content for malicious or manipulative or deceptive purposes. Something to keep an eye on as we see more of these algorithm updates coming forward and how Google handles it, and Amazon, who doesn't care. So one of the big questions with ChatGPT and Bing using AI chat and Bard is, what will attribution look like for SEO? How will you get credit if someone comes to your site from one of these chatbots? Well, Fabrice Cannell of Bing announced that in the next few weeks, Bing is going to be attributing clicks and referrals to Bing Chat. Now, it does lead to a bigger question of like, we're back to not provided. You're not going to know exactly what it was that actually led someone in their search, in their query, in their prompt, in their whatever, to your website. And you know what? At least Bing is providing citations to take them to your website, and you will get attribution that it was Bing Chat, but it's opening up a whole other can of worms, kind of like Google already has with like Discover and whatnot. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. So keep your eyes peeled on Webmaster Tools. Great product, by the way. Bing, making a comeback. Bing. Speaking of AI and sending traffic from the chatbots to the web, Maroj, who is a ChatGPT Plus user and writes about AI, shared on Twitter that with access to the ChatGPT Plus plugins, the browsing plugin is now the default. I myself have not gotten plugin access yet, despite being a Plus user. I'm very excited for it, but basically he showed how it works, breaks it down, and it's very interesting. The way that you put a query, if you have the browser enabled, it then shows what it does. So it goes and does a search using the Bing API, and then it'll look for a specific website and then click it and then scroll and then go back. It can do all of these commands that Maroj breaks down. It's very interesting to see how this works in the context of ChatGPT and ultimately sending traffic and using the web. So, that issue in the past that the web was that ChatGPT's large language model, GPT-4, was only trained on data up until 2021. Well, if it has access to the web, that changes things. So I don't know. What do you think is going to be the future of web-enabled chat, kind of like Bing and now kind of like ChatGPT? Something to pay attention to going forward. Really cool, really interesting, still kind of risky. So a very interesting, thought-provoking post on Search Engine Land by Jason Tabeling talking about traditional search versus chatbots and ChatGPT in terms of what the future use cases will look like. And it's something that I've been thinking a lot about and something that we've covered on this show in the past. But what Jason does, he talks about different specific types of queries that might be an advantage for traditional search. So he talks about things like facts and figures and math at this point are better for search-defined answers. Integration, so like using maps or YouTubes. He talks about images. Ultimately, and then finally, like opinions and nuance, being able to look at different answers and choose which route you want to go. How long is that going to last? I don't know, because on the side of ChatGPT, he talks about, the ability to curate content. He talks about creativity, like generating AI content for you as opposed to like searching for content, how-to tasks and recipes, and really getting into like more granular answers where there isn't like a clear answer on the web. Support for coding, for instance, is a great example of that. Now, I do think that going forward, there are going to be different use cases, whether it's like informational versus how-tos versus perspectives. I think that some of the limitations that Jason points out won't always be limitations, like images. I do think we'll get more of a multimodal experience, which we know is on the way with GPT-4. And what that means is the incorporation of images, videos, text all together. Like in the sense of you don't expect ChatGPT to give you a text, an image, a text, an image as its output. It's just text at this point. But that will change sooner rather than later. And will that ultimately change how we search? And will that, be a similar sort of experience to what we do with Project Magi, Google's version of this AI-assisted personalized chat going forward? And the other big thing is the transactions. We mentioned the plugin, in terms of being able to say, go find me a flight and a hotel and things to do in one place and have ChatGPT create all of that connected to the internet. Well, that's a better experience than search. So it's going to be interesting going forward. Good post by Jason. We're checking out. And finally, I did a thing. I wrote a post. I wrote an article for our iPullRank's new rank tracking software, ExactScience. Working with John Murch, just released a new feature that allows you to segment your keywords using ChatGPT. It's really cool. Tried it out myself. Basically, you upload your keywords, you click a button, and then it divides them into topic clusters and need states. For any of you who's doing any sort of SEO reporting, using segmentation for your keywords is pretty key to be able to surface insights and monitor specific projects that you're working on. And yet, not a lot of people do it. I mean, just the idea of keyword segmentation alone is underrated, whether you're doing it by the buyer's journey, those need states of like awareness, familiarity, consideration, personas. Who are the personas and how are they searching? What keywords are they using? Taxonomy. How is your site broken up? And those topic clusters that make so much sense in terms of where your focus is. I also talked about the ways that you can, if you're not like an expert in creating formulas in Google Sheets or Excel, how you can use ChatGPT to create those formulas for you to put them in. And then you can do some really interesting segmenting around, revenue-driven segmenting of what keywords are performing the best, generative AI segmenting if you're doing an experiment with generative AI and just tagging those, CTR-driven, which ones have the best click-through rates and like tracking that segment, seasonal SEO, and then one of my favorites, which is really interesting, the idea of barnacle SEO, the idea of tracking other people's websites, like your social profiles, or showing up on specific lists that you've done for digital PR to get on, and making sure that you are ranked, or those pages are ranking. You have less control over it, but at least you have a good sense of how you're performing, and you can use ChatGPT And there's actually some really cool ChatGPT powered spreadsheets that you can, talk in plain language and have them spit out. Like spreadsheets.com has one, and ChatGPT for Google Sheets is another. I have a whole list on the site, but really enjoyed writing that post. Let me know your thoughts. Do you use segmenting? Would you use ChatGPT for it? I'm curious to hear what you think. Cool. Moving on to SEO Twitter. There was a interesting tweet by Cyrus Shepard talking about that he thinks that the golden age of SEO is over, that pretty much SEO is going to go downhill from here because Google is losing money from ads. They're having to pivot and play defense against AI, and that is ultimately going to impact the way that search plays out, that the quality of search, they're not going to innovate as much. They're going to try and save money where they can. This is specifically for Google SEO. And I don't know if I agree. I'm going to do a little bit of a wait and see how Project Magi plays out and how Google does get involved, because with all the resources and the moat that they've built at their disposal in terms of YouTube and, people using Google as like the market leader for over a decade, it doesn't happen overnight. Yes, it's on leadership to get it right, but I'm curious what you think. Do you think the golden age of Google SEO has ended? Okay, so still in the Twitter world, there was a very inspirational Twitter thread by Ian Nuttal. So not to poo-poo on hustle culture, but basically the whole idea is he shared that, he has a 20,000 per month programmatic SEO business with no employees. So for those of you who aren't familiar, programmatic SEO is basically using code and data to generate a ton of pages at scale using a few templates to acquire traffic back to your website. And when done well, it can be really effective in SEO. So Ian breaks down, how he addresses it with niches, how he, adds context so his template pages are actually helpful, issues that you want to deal with indexing and crawling, because when you start generating that many pages, you can start to get limited in what does get indexed by Google, which kind of defeats the purpose of the whole thing. He breaks it down in terms of the value of internal linking and how he kind of stands out, and then ultimately how he leverages the programmatic SEO, because it's not the only thing to ultimately generate revenue. At what point he starts adding blog posts and email newsletters and the full 9 yards to really add value to these sites. What I love about the thread is it's very practical. It shows actionable tips. Sure, it's inspirational. We all want to make $20,000 per month from programmatic SEO, but he kind of gives you a little bit of the insight of why it would work. Great Twitter thread. So last week I mentioned Abby Gleason's post on finding emerging keywords. Just a little sweet tweet that caught my attention. She showcased how you can use TikTok to find some of those keywords. So specifically, she showed and compared the views for trends that start on TikTok and eventually people start searching for. So for instance, in her example, like horror talk, hair theory, cluttercore, we're talking millions and millions of views. This is very prevalent in the knowledge of these niches and the knowledge of these audiences. And you got to think eventually they are going to be searching for that on Google. So opportunity, use TikTok. And it just kind of speaks to what was written earlier. Jason wrote about traditional search versus ChatGPT. All these different platforms are where people search now. You can't only think about Google. As Cyrus mentioned, the golden age is over. Every platform, Reddit, ChatGPT, TikTok, they all exist as their own search engines with different audiences for different purposes. It's something to consider with your entire content strategy beyond, like, SEO is more than just Google. Who would have thunk it? Okay. So it's always hard not to be skeptical about a case study when it's obviously promoting someone's own brand. Interesting one, though, and I want to see your thoughts with Jake Ward. So what did he do? He got his website going from 0 to 750,000 visits per month using, like, organically, using 100% AI-generated content using his tool Byword. If I'm giving a promotion, good work. 7,000 pages generated, hit 300,000 per month after 6 months, 750 after 12 months. 4,000 keywords in positions 1 through 3, looking like he's focusing on 6 core topics. He breaks down in the Twitter thread what he was doing, of how he built the site and the architecture, and then building blog posts, et cetera, et cetera. It's interesting to see whether or not this survives. Actually, Lily Ray asked if he's be willing to follow up in 6 months, because the performance is impressive. And he claims that he's survived a bunch of these algorithm updates, but it's hard not to be skeptical when it's purely AI generative, like at scale. We had the Ian thread about programmatic SEO and their opportunities to do that. It makes you fearful of everyone using generative AI content to flood the web, but maybe this will work. Let me know after you check out this Twitter thread. Let me know in the comments what you think. Does this seem legit? Jake seems very much, part of this engagement community, so people are very supportive from an AI perspective. But is it just like a byword play, or does this seem legitimate? What am I missing? Really cool podcast episode last week. Tory Gray and Sam Torres of the Gray Dot Company joined the Do Follow podcast by Search Engine Rankings, talking all about their frameworks with e-commerce and SaaS and more. But what was really interesting is they dove into some of the technical approaches they use for collecting data across the web to inform SEO strategy. Really interesting insights. They go all over the place when they talk about the different types of data customer data they look at in terms of building out their SEO roadmap. So check out that episode. 2 very, very brilliant ladies. Ready for your weekly Python tutorial? Well, Simone de Palma on SEO Deaths, his blog, put together a really cool step-by-step tutorial on how to build a Sankey chart with fine-tuning your search intent. So using Python, he shows how you can go and build out this like flow state from, your informational queries and your transactional and your commercial and overlap to your specific keywords. Really sophisticated, really technical, but pretty cool if you are into that. Great work, Simone. Really interesting blog post by Kevin Indig talking about the great issue of server-side rendering versus client-side rendering. When it comes to JavaScript and displaying your website, whether it's client-side or server-side, can impact your SEO, despite the fact that Google's documentation is kind of ambiguous about it. And making the decision to actually change from client-side to server-side, you need proof, you need evidence, you need case studies to show that it's valuable. And so put together 5 case studies showing examples of when switching from client side to server side actually benefited traffic and SEO significantly. Take a look through that. It was really interesting on Kevin's side to share that. Thought it was a good post and very insightful. SEO tool callouts. Samuel Schmidt put together a really cool website text extractor tool that allows you to get the text from any website, free to use. Really cool use cases. For instance, if you wanted to get text to be used in ChatGPT, for instance, if you have a product and you want to get all the product reviews really easily, but you don't want to like download them, or a competitor product or any sort of competitor analysis, you can use the tool, get the text, put in ChatGPT, have it summarize it really easily. Bam, boom, boom. Really cool tool. Nice work, Samuel Schmidt. Then Sam Underwood keeps cranking out tools. This one, he actually partners with Data for SEO. So if you have a Data for SEO API key and you want to get search volume in bulk for $70, you can get 1 million keywords and their search volume. Really straightforward, really easy to use. Good work partnering there, Sam. And then finally, bringing it back to Ian Nuttal, he created a really cool tool called Kappa, which allows you to put, it's like a prompt generator. So if you want to get a blog post for SEO generated, you get the keywords, you can put in, the style of the voice, any sort of context. So, it's worth playing around with. Speaking of prompts, always love AI PRM, really great library prompts. That's a Chrome extension plugin that's tied right into ChatGPT, and it covers like every different type of category that you can think of: productivity, SEO, marketing. Super useful. All in all, great tools across the board. Definitely check those out. And finally, last week on Rankable, had a really great interview with Jeremy Moser of SERP talking all about big brand link building in the age of generative AI. We went all over the place when it came to link building, the value of links in 2023, whether they still matter for like the really big guys. And Jeremy had some really interesting insights in terms of how big brand enterprises think about links that's different than the rest of us. Ultimately, quality over quantity. We talked about, AI and, outreach using AI generative emails to get more links. Interesting stuff. He had some advice around Harrow. So really good interview. That's it. Another episode of the SEO Weekly in the books. I gotta suggest, I gotta promote, I gotta talk about ExactScience. If you haven't tried it yet, we do have, it's our rank tracking software. 7-day free trial, check 30 keywords and check their ranks daily. You can segment it, as I mentioned at the beginning of the post, however you see fit. And then it's very affordable to scale. So basically you pick your devices, the location, the frequency, and then you'll be able to pay based on that, exactly what you're looking for. It saves you a ton of money, especially if you're trying to track millions of keywords. Anyway, thank you again for watching. I genuinely appreciate it. My name is Garrett Sussman of iPullRank. If you're into this, please subscribe to the channel, leave us a like and a comment, share on the socials. I hope you have a great week. We'll see what happens next week. I'm sure there'll be so much more to report. I'll catch you then.